Deborah or Megan, you have any tips here for, what pitfalls sometimes our entrants fall into sometimes?
I think one of the holes is writing or developing an entry like it's a brief that the client's going to see. So I think thinking about who you're writing for and really getting to why it's award winning as opposed to checking every box. Hopefully it doesn't have to go through med, reg, legal. So I think it's really thinking about your audience there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I totally agree, Deborah. I think breaking through is kind of a theme that is so important. This is there are hundreds and hundreds of submissions that these jurors are looking through. So being able to be succinct, I think, in your response too, versus kind of repeating yourself or copy and pasting the same thing for every single cat or question that exists within the submission is super important too. So.
Yeah, great points. Be succinct. Be entertaining as much as possible in your writing, because the judges see hundreds of. We get between 500 and 600 submissions the last couple of years, and some of the categories have as many as 50 entries in them. And we try to limit the number of entries that each judge has to look at as our jurors' eyebrows are going up there, to make sure that they're not overloaded. But you really have to try to know who your audience is, and in this case, it's the people you're looking at here. Include metrics, wherever you can, like revenue, switching, or adherence rates, TRX, NRX, or some other data set, and go ahead, be creative in how you measure success. The jurors will be all the more impressed with it. Make up your own to the extent that you can. We've seen it as some of the categories have, or some of the submissions have gone into the purpose-driven area. Where you're trying to influence policymakers or legislators. We've seen people get kind of creative in terms of how they measure success there, or influence campaigns. Budget, I should just say, is defined as all in. That is the total for agency, fee, out-of-pocket, media, sponsorships, etc. So to the extent you're comfortable diverging spends for that, go ahead, please list it. And now is the time to begin, securing client approval for these items. Because we've heard pharma can be a little slow to greenlight these things. So you might want to get started on that. Which brings us to our next category, or next slide, is confidentiality. It's certainly a reality that we all, live with in this industry. At MM+M, and Deborah and Megan can vouch for this. We do respect, your confidentiality. That's paramount. And we want you to enter your best creative. So we've done all we can to encourage that, and we don't want you to be slowed down, by client confidentiality. So we have a space on the submission form for listing confidential information. Go ahead and use it. And the information will only be seen by our jurors and not used beyond awards judging, full stop. So you can enter with confidence there. Okay, how to stand out during each phase of judging. There's two stages, one to whittle the entries down to a top 10, and the second one to pick gold, silver, and honorable mentions. And, as I said, we're talking about hundreds of entries here, so make it entertaining. Megan, I know you wanted to put a word in, for some of the kind of more technical categories, but you've judged the last couple of years, like data analytics and relationship marketing. How do you make data and analytics, enthralling, so to speak?
Good question. I think it's probably going to depend on your audience, right? So I tend to geek out on the data a bit, but I think the key here is really, when you're submitting for a category, just make sure you've got, it locked up and it aligns to what is being asked for, right? I think sometimes, and you mentioned this earlier, Mark, there's some misalignment between the submission and the category, and it doesn't quite fit, right? And I think that can become a struggle. But of course, I think, as you think about how the awards are judged, right? Like, so much happens online. And, we obviously all have Zoom fatigue now. Think about a juror going through a lot of that. So I think it's always powerful to include really clear tidbits of information related to the category, whether that's a technical one or not. And I know that a lot of those categories aren't necessarily exactly fit for a video per se, but there's always a way to market what you're doing. So as creative agencies and as creative brains that all of us are, I think it's important to just keep that hat on when writing a submission, even for those categories too.
Absolutely. Yeah. Okay. So let's move on to video. Speaking of that, videos are a requirement for the large healthcare agency category, but for all other categories, they're really optional, but strongly recommended to support your submission, because they're the best opportunity, as Megan was saying, for you to really uniquely tell your story, and they've become almost standard, for compelling and award-winning entries. So I will say now, I'll go on a limb and say that if you don't have a good submission, if you don't have a submission video, I think you're really hamstringing your entry. But how do you do a good submission video? Deb, do you want to say a few words here before we show an example?
Absolutely. It's like everywhere else in life. We all want to consume video, and it's such an opportunity to tell your story and to frame it the way you want to frame it. This is like every other thing that we do. I think not thinking of it as an award submission, but thinking about connecting with that audience and telling them the story that you need to tell. And it's not everything; it's the key points. So I think I've seen it. It's just when a video is well done and the story is well told, you can really put your work in the best light. It's an opportunity, really.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely, yeah. And it fills in the gaps that you might not have, mentioned in your submission per se. So, Alexis, you want to play that video that we had? We actually got pre-approval from one of the gold winning awards last year to play their entry video, and it really nicely encapsulates everything that Deborah and Megan are saying here. So, why don't we go ahead and play that video?
I always thought football killed me, Dad. Dad was never diagnosed with a concussion, but it was just hit after hit after hit. He was already suffering from dementia in his 50s. So when he should have been enjoying his retirement, we were instead losing a little bit more of him every day. After he passed, I donated his brain to the Concussion Legacy Foundation and Boston Brain Bank. And when we got the results back, I wasn't surprised. Dad had stage 4 CTE. After that, I got involved with the foundation and learned about a study that showed over time, the risk of getting CTE from playing tackle football was as strong, if not stronger, than the risk of getting cancer from smoking. And that's how Tackle Can Wait got started.
How's everybody doing? We all right? Great job. You guys are doing it.
Tackle football is like smoking. The younger I start, the longer I'm exposed to danger. You wouldn't let me smoke. When should I start tackle?
And then all of a sudden, the campaign was everywhere.
Clearly struck a nerve with everyone here.
There's a new ad centered around
Tackle football to smoking. The ad titled Tackle Can Wait.
It reminds you of that, this is your brain on drugs.
The campaign was on every major national news network, including 3 roundtables on Fox News.
CTE is a very real thing.
Yeah.
Tackle Can Wait even got a shout out in the New Yorker on Super Bowl Sunday. So the conversation's still going. And we're continuing to support the campaign with banner ads, a website, and guerrilla tactics like this brochure that we took to Boston for the first of many hearings in state legislatures considering bills to ban tackle football for kids. The one in California is actually named after our campaign, the Tackle Can Wait bill. I know my dad would be really proud, and I know we're gonna get it done.
I always thought football killed me, Dad.
Great. Thank you. Deborah, if you saw that, video in the jury room, what would you think?
Well, that's it's a beautiful piece of work, and it's a beautiful piece of video around the video. It's exceptional, and I do think it's a great model. I also think it was a big campaign, and you can still tell a great story about a smaller campaign. So and with sort of smaller production values, but still the storytelling I think is key, and that was really amazingly well done.
Yeah.
Yep, absolutely. Okay, great. Okay, so submit a good submission video. Okay, let's move on here to digging in further, peeling back the curtain more in terms of tips. So we're going to start now with the who. We kind of alluded to this earlier in terms of knowing who your audience is and empathizing with them. Deb, you want to kind of elaborate on that point a little bit?
Well, I think one of the things to think about is, as a creative person, when I make my submission, it's not everyone in the room is necessarily creative in their label. So you've got a lot of different kinds of judges. They're coming from various parts of industry, but you know what? They're all pretty sharp marketers, and they're used to making decisions fast, and they're used to consuming information that's delivered up to them in the way they want to digest it. So it's really appreciating that they're going through a lot of information, and they want it quick, and they're going to make decisions quickly. So you got to, I think, pitch to that.
Yeah.
What else, Megan?
No, I think you covered it. I mean, it is a diverse set of people, right? Those who've been on the creative side, those who've been on other agency functions, or whether it's strategy or account or other things. But then you've also got, your more seasoned healthcare marketers that end up in the space as well. I think, it's the breakthrough, right? Like, to your point, I would assume, we talked about video before, that at least in the early rounds, there are a lot of judges who are going straight to that video. Because to Deborah's point earlier, that's how we like to consume information in our daily lives. And it's a lot, it's the quickest way to get the recap on what exists there. So yeah, just be sensitive to the fact that there's just a lot of information to consume, and it can get really tedious as you're trying to digest a lot of information all at once, because typically you're sitting in front of your computer or with other judges in a room for quite some time. So yeah, totally agree with everything you said.
And you're hoping your video is first or second. If it's, 12th, so you got to think about that. If I'm way back in the lineup, how am I starting? Especially that. It's just like anything. What's your first line? What you're in?
Yeah. And it's true. It's like the visual components of the submission, even if it's not the video, are important, right? Because so many of us are just drawn to visualizations. And I think that, at least for me, that's what immediately kind of flags oh, perhaps this is not just one more thing in a sea of sameness. Not that the submissions are a sea of sameness, but so much, as we all know, of pharma marketing, like it or not, is, the golden retriever running through the grass field with whomever, right? At the moment you can tell me that what you're submitting is not that, awesome.
Right. And I should also put a plug in for, problem solution, being very succinct and clear in terms of setting up what the problem was and doing a really good situation analysis, followed by the insights, that your market research uncovered, which then laddered up to your strategy, and then your creative execution, and then followed by your results, of course. And to the extent that you can make that as clear as possible and take us through that, take the judges through that in a very logical fashion, they will be very much appreciative. And the video, it's just, at the end of the day, it's a relief to see a good video, and to not make them have to work too hard to kind of figure out, what were the results, and, is this a complete submission, so just think about that, as you're putting this together. Okay, let's move on to the next tip section here, the what. I'm not going to set this one up, and I'm going to let Megan kind of take it away here.
So this is a clever way of saying, right, that if it's crummy work, it's crummy work. There's not much you're going to be able to do in a submission to address that. I think one of the things that I like to see with submissions as I'm judging is work that's being submitted because an agency truly believes in the caliber of that work, and that it's not just a submission to kind of check a box or please a client on the industry side. So I think, and this all ties back to what Marc said earlier about just this being kind of a premium award and wanting to maintain the integrity of that and keep it elevated to a point where we're not watering it down with, finalists that are publicized that maybe aren't up to the standards that we all, know we can be at as healthcare marketers. But Deborah, I don't know if you have anything.
Well, absolutely. And on the agency side, there can be a lot of pressure to submit for clients. But what, I think the other piece is, as we said to earlier, putting together a really thoughtful submission is a time-consuming process. And so better to kind of like, are you a betting person? Because, make good bets and put the energy into the best work. I think that's the way to go.
Totally.
Absolutely. And I should say that that video was courtesy of Finger Paint, just in case anyone didn't realize that. And we thank them, for giving us permission to show that video. Okay, just one more section on tips and tricks before we get on to your questions. This one is, how to market your marketing and how to put your best foot forward. Deborah, what can we say there?
Well, I think we've spoken about this a lot, but I think it is thinking about it like a pitch. And with something you spoke about earlier, Mark, I think setting the context. A lot of times we all know we're the context of what this problem we were solving was complicated. And you can't assume that the judging audience will appreciate that. How do you crystallize that, synthesize that problem that you had to solve? And it's, even great work doesn't sell itself. We all know that. So, share with us, show us what it needed to do and how it did it. It's thinking about the audience again.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that, Deborah. Like, you need a hook. Like, you absolutely do. And I think it more in the details of things. I think from the standpoint of marketing your marketing, right? Like, yes, we all get that. That's what we need to do, and we all know how to do that for the most part. But the other piece that I always find to be really compelling when I'm reviewing a submission is a brilliant strategic insight. So beyond just that typical, like, oh, we're looking at, this type of patient population, we know they're this old, we know this, and this, just kind of those checkbox things. If there is a brilliant strategic insight in there, and then you can demonstrate how that was pulled through creatively, like, I know that sounds so simple, but it really, I don't know. That's something that gets me super, super jazzed when I'm looking at a submission. So
I think that's so great, Megan. And I think sometimes by the time we're all the way at executing tactics, where it came from, people can forget that. Again, it just becomes so ingrained in how you think about the work. But digging back and remembering where it came, what's the origin story, I think is really, really smart.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and I know there's been a lot of kind of talk like, oh, is the U.S. pharma industry too data driven? Do we kind of hide behind that safety and efficacy data too much? Versus in Europe, where they seem to be more enamored with their movement campaigns and their disease awareness campaigns. There's regulatory reasons for that, of course. But what our jurors are saying is that nothing can replace that, kind of coming up with that brilliant strategic insight, telling the audience something about themselves they might not have known, and then, kind of writ large in your creative, kind of really, going, hammering home on that, on building your creative off of that. Okay, so now we're going to take your questions. So I want to just remind everybody that that you can submit a question very easily through the Q&A box in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen, and we'll hand you the virtual mic, if you will, while you ask your question. So be prepared for that. You can activate your microphone and camera on the top left of your screen, and then click the raise hand icon to indicate you would like to join the speakers on screen. So we'd love to have you. So I believe we have one question that's come in so far.
Yes, definitely. We have one question. I'm going to bring them to the screen. So in a sense, I'm just going to kind of hand the virtual mic to you for you can ask your question. You'll stay on screen as they answer. Remember, try to keep it brief so we can get questions in. And you can send questions through text as well if you don't want to come on screen, or you can send us questions after the webcast. We're here to help you with your entries. So I'm bringing Adele Durham to the screen because she's raised her hand.
Hi. Hi there. So I actually am the VP of events of MM+M, and I wanted to ask a question that we get asked constantly around production values for the videos. There might be some companies out there who don't have a big budget for the support material. So what is your guidance on, if I don't have a big budget, shall I still try and submit something? And how big do I need to go?
It's all about the story. You can tell a really good story without having a big budget. Be creative. It's such making videos fun. So I think you think about what that story is and tell it to us in a compelling way, but it sure doesn't need to be a big budget. You can do it all kinds of ways.
So I'm thinking like iPhone, editing something together on iMovie, that is something that you would look at and you wouldn't mark down?
Not at all.
Great. Okay. That's my question, Alexis and Mark. Thanks, Deborah. Thanks, Megan.
Thanks, Adele. I'll take you off screen.
Appreciate that. So everybody saw how easy that was. So please don't be shy. Submit your questions. Even if we don't get to them during the session, we will answer them. So please submit them. One other one came in here from Janine. Can you tell me what makes a good agency video? So this person is talking about, for the agency awards categories, and we do encourage videos, for those especially. What elements, what are the ingredients of a good agency submission video? Do you guys want to tackle that one?
Do you want to hit that, Megan?
Sure, absolutely. So I don't recall if I've ever been a judge of that particular category before in the past. So I'm not sure I have a ton to compare, to from like a best in class standpoint, right? But I think for me, as I think about that agency category, so much of that is like beyond just the work, right? It's what an agency has created, and the energy and the passion and the culture that they bring, that then kind of gets pulled through and demonstrated by the work is just so important. So I think for an overall agency video, I would love to see something that not only highlights some of the work that they're most proud of, but also talks about, the special thing that they've built, that is, and the detail, some of the kind of high level details of exactly what's gone into building that has now kind of gotten pulled through into some of this tremendous work. So I don't know, Deborah, do you have anything to add to that?
No, that was perfect. I love it.
And what should be the length of the typical video, whether it's for the Healthcare Marketing Awards or the agency awards? Someone wants to know, what's the ideal length?
Same as in life, like how short can you keep it is really the question. Certainly 90 seconds is really, boy, that's bitchin' good.
Yeah,
I agree. Under 2 minutes. Under 2 minutes is ideal.
Yeah, that's the sweet spot. Okay. Now, someone also asks, is there someone specific we can reach out to in order to get thoughts on appropriate categories? And, obviously I said earlier that, make sure you pick the right category. And yes, absolutely. If you have any sort of a la carte questions, you can hit us up with those offline. There's an email. I think Alexis is probably listed, right? Alexis as a primary point of contact on there, and she and I, collaborate a lot on these things. So you can always hit us up with your questions. We had one a couple years ago where it was for the agency branding category, and it was actually an in-house marketing department of a healthcare services company, and they submitted in the agency self-promotion category. And it was, unfortunately, we had to, disqualify it because it was in the wrong category. So that can, have a difference down the line, and, a lot of work goes into these things. So we want you guys, again, nothing to hold you back and slow you down. So feel free to, ask, measure twice and, cut once on that. Okay. Let's see. Another question. Do we know why the Young Marketer of the Year award was removed from the list this year? Well, Young Marketer of the Year award was an award that we used to recognize, client-side marketers, I believe. And I think it was kind of rolled more into, we have an award now that recognizes marketing teams. So it's, the client and the agency together. And as I mentioned earlier, we go through the categories every year. We look at, the number of entries. And I think that maybe that one was a little bit light on entries. So, if there's a lot of interest in that as a standalone category, we can always bring that back. But that's kind of the decision we made on that one. Do agencies know when their submissions are flagged or disqualified? Yes, sometimes the example that I just cited earlier, that kind of snuck through, and we didn't, catch it, but we do contact entrants offline, and make sure, and, that they're entering properly if we catch it, and there are multiple levels of judging, to maximize the chances of, or minimize the chances of anything slipping through. And of course, money will be refunded and all of that good stuff. Okay, here's a question that's come in. Let's see. I was wondering what is expected in look for. Let's see, in look for category. Not sure what that one's referring to. If you could kind of elaborate on that one. Narasimha, I think that one came from you. I think maybe there's if you could just elaborate on that one. In the meantime, we'll come back to that one. But for Megan and Deborah, any tips on campaign images? Like submitting the actual creative. What should the submitters focus on there?
I think you want to show your best work, and sometimes depending on the category, you need to show you want to show the breadth, but looking at every single piece is generally not the answer. I think you're going to choose your best and make it big.
Yeah, no clutter. Don't need to see like every single iteration and how a particular creative campaign has been pulled through in every type of asset. I think it's totally it, Deborah. Like just focus on like the ones that are really compelling. Need to know /see ones.
I will say, I know there's always a temptation because we work in this very difficult space where we get limited by all the stuff that we need to put around work. I'm always impressed, and I know sometimes people take all that off to submit. I'm impressed when it's submitted with all the ISI and the balance, and it's shown that the agency handled that approach, in the spirit of the way that the FDA wants us to do, which is to inform people. So I'm impressed when that piece of the work is handled well.
Great, yeah. Just one more follow up on the Young Marketer of the Year category. Adele reminded me, thank you, Adele, that we're working on a new awards category called the Pharma All-Stars, which is focusing on pharma companies, as the name implies. And because that was a pharma client-side award, we decided to roll it into that new awards program. So you'll be hearing more about that later this year. Okay, a couple minutes left here to see if we have any other additional questions. If a campaign is ongoing in the early stages, how do you weight a lack of early results versus insight, strategic, creative? What do you guys think of that?
I think, well, I've certainly seen, it's tough because we do see some entries that come in with great metrics and some with none at all. And the judging criteria asks us to really think about that. So we do weigh that, and we talk about it a lot. You should be submitting your work when you want to submit it and giving us the best picture of where it is in its life cycle and how it's doing. And we will try to judge it in that spirit, I think.
Yeah. There's always leading metrics, right? Something's always going to be on the market for, I guess if you're submitting something that hasn't gone live yet, that's a whole nother conundrum. Maybe you wait till next year, but it's, yeah, I think there's always something to include. I don't think I've ever said, in reviewing finalists or whatever, like, oh, this is just too, like this section's too weak, because the timing, it's all about the timing and when submissions are due versus when you've completed the work and how long it's had a chance to be in the market. So yeah, I think it's, do what you can. Right.
There's always next year. You can always sit on it and wait till the next one. But yeah, leading indicators, that, as was mentioned, is always good. Okay. Last chance. If anybody has any questions for our jurors, here's one. Any tips on how to differentiate as a media agency? Our conversation today is focused on creative. So I wanted to see if we should consider anything unique for this. That's a great question, Gabriel. Thank you for that. We do have 2 awards, for professional media and consumer media, and recognizing, those entities. What wisdom can we impart, for those folks?
Strategy. That's how you're going to win here, right? Like if I see an incredibly compelling, customer insight pulled through to an activation plan that's that. I mean, maybe this is because I have a background on the agency side, on the strategy side of things, but that's something that I get super excited about. So I think, the flashiness of a creative category is one thing, but I do think in any sort of media agency submission, there's going to be something compelling that you can share that's related to the customer insight and how it was addressed in the pull through.
And I think it's innovation thinking. You know, how did you really do something beyond the expected?
Mm-hmm. Totally.
Yeah, the creativity in the media plan for sure. What's your point of view on multiple category entries for the same work? What's too many? What's acceptable? What's overkill? It's limited by only your budget. No, just kidding. You know, if you think that, you know, that we do see this where a campaign can play in multiple categories and sometimes disparate categories. So to the extent that you feel it maximizes your chances of winning, and that's why you see, you know, year after year, you see the same campaigns, bubbling up in the gold and silver for multiple categories. So again, if you have any questions, I would say the default would be to contact Alexis, and we can, you know, help you know, give some advice there. But Deborah or Megan, any advice on that?
No, I thought that was a great question.
Yeah, it is. And I'll be honest, like, I don't judge if I see the same entry, like the same campaign for multiple entries. It's about the competitive set within that entry. So I don't discount a campaign that I'm seeing over and over and over again if it happens to be best in class in the in whatever the relevant submission and aligned to the category requirements, like, and it's not like too much of a stretch. It's just going to be judged against the other work that's submitted there. So I don't think there is I wouldn't say there's a limit.
Yeah, good. How many years does a candidate need to be in the industry to qualify for the Pinnacle Award? Okay, so that's referring to one of our other awards programs. The Pinnacle Awards is a career achievement award. And we also had another question about the Hall of Fame and Women to Watch, which is also a separate awards program. So we'd be happy to take those questions offline. But I want to give people one more chance to ask questions, again, on the media side or on the creative side or the agency side for our two esteemed jurors here. In the meantime, I want to read one quote from one of our previous veteran jurors, Bruce Graham, which I think is a nice quote, you know, kind of sums up what we're looking for here. Real commercial success comes not from keeping supposedly, but not actually, proprietary ideas and techniques secret, but in propagating best practices throughout the industry by sharing them. The rising tide that lifts all boats lifts higher than the proprietary tide in a private lock. Don't hide your light under a bushel. Submit the real stuff, the killer ideas, the campaigns that really move the needle using state-of-the-art strategies and tactics. And again, we know there are real, you know, pharma-sponsored campaigns that just don't check off the box in the multicultural area, you know, by, you know, say translating copy into Spanish or by including a few token ethnic people in photography. And the same can be said, you know, for sort of relationship marketing programs that, you know, use real data to segment messaging and align channel weight with individual channel affinity and data and analytics. And so we know they're out there, but, you know, and raising awareness for rare diseases and diabetes, you know, tell us about them. You know, this is really an opportunity to show the industry's great work. And that's my plug that I'll put out there. I think we've got one more question here. Do we have time for one more question, Alexis? Okay, great. So what is the right balance between highlighting the creative versus tactical execution?
I think is the tactical creative. That's awesome. When you actually innovate on the tactical side. I mean, we all love to look at a beautiful video and, you know, a gorgeous ad. But if you really are actually doing something interesting on the tactical side, that's where a lot of the work's getting done. That's where behaviors are getting changed. So I think we love to see that.
Yeah, I totally agree. If you don't have solid tactical execution, that your creative's never gonna get the eyeballs on it that it needs to have on it. And if your creative is your the tactical execution doesn't really matter as much, right? So I think it's the combination of the two, and it's probably category dependent as well. Like how important is the tactical execution for that particular category in illustrating the success?
Right, it kind of depends a little bit on the context, right, in which the category is and the submission is. Okay. All right, great. Well, that's about all the time we have. We're at 40 minutes here. I want to thank Megan and Deborah for generously giving us their time and sharing their great tips. Thank you both.
Thank you.
you.
Absolutely. And thank you everyone out there for, letting us pull back the curtain, if you will, a little bit. And, we hope to see you in October, either virtually or who knows, maybe even live. Hey, a guy can hope, right? Yeah. So for Megan Rivera, Deborah Lauderman, Alexis Renga, this has been Marc Iskowitz signing off. Enjoy the rest of your day, everybody. Thanks again.
Thank you.
Can't wait to see your work.
See ya.